Hello, Senators. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today.
Thank you.
My name is Eugene Sinigalliano, and I'm the only at-risk of displacement individual that Empire State Development was forced to put as a member of their Penn Station Community Advisory Committee working group, the CATWAG, even though thousands of people's home, businesses, and employment is at risk. They did not allow a single business representative at risk to be a member of the CATWAG. So when they talk about how they've got community engagement, I'm the only one. I'm assuming because I was invited to testify by Senator Krueger today, I'm allowed to share information without the fear of legal action from Empire State Development Corporation. They have.
I don't know if we can guarantee that,
we
but
can't guarantee
we have no
that.
ability to guarantee that, but I'm feeling pretty good that that's not going to happen.
Okay. They have not
We
been
have a bail
open.
fund in the
Thank you,
Senate.
Senator. They have not been open or transparent and did much of their planning during the COVID pandemic in secrecy. At the first CATWAG meeting, we were told everything presented to us was confidential and was not legal to share, even with my at-risk neighbors or my at-risk community. They refused to abide by the New York open meeting law when I requested it, and they constantly email me that their information, and I quote, is proprietary, privileged, confidential, and or exempt from disclosure under applicable law. If you are not the intended recipient, you are hereby notified that any viewing, copying, disclosure, or distribution of this information may be subject to legal restriction or sanction, end quote. Despite all this, ESD allowed multiple Voronado employees to attend the CATWAG meetings, yet ESD stated to us they were not CATWAG members. This is totally unfair. Citizens who fund the New York State budget have a right to know what the state is doing with our money, and using a state-run private corporation like ESD to do an end run around the open meeting law was always wrong. I strongly oppose ESD's Penn GPP, and while I can only touch on some of the issues here because of my time limit, my written testimony that I also submitted details why this plan is fatally flawed, outdated, and special interest driven. Penn Station needs to be improved, but New York deserves a better plan that puts transit first and foremost. A better plan needs to protect residents and businesses, preserve historic buildings, and most importantly, be fiscally responsible to taxpayers. ESD's GPP appears to be illegally segmented. They lack a master plan. Responsible New York City land use must start with and focus on transit improvement. The station, the underground tracks. Instead, ESD's GPP is primarily focused on a massive office real estate development that does not coordinate, phase, or properly align transit improvements with real estate development, which is a critical flaw with dire consequences. The GPP does not have any direct control of Penn Station improvement because MTA is going to design their own plan, which is not even in the GPP. Penn Station expansion is being planned by the other railroads, and any expansion plan must undergo its own federal NEPA review process, again with no direct control in ESD's GPP. ESD assumes Penn Station must be expanded outside its current footprint, but to date has not seriously considered through running as an alternative. Through running provides increased transit efficiency, superior one-fare rides, and a unified rail network connecting the entire region. Major cities all over the world and in the United States already have or are implementing far more efficient through running stations, but this plan would leave us with butt-end stations. ESD has failed to carefully evaluate and detail the financial risks of their GPP. Their risky value capture financing and funding schemes are based on a flawed scenario that has already cost New York taxpayers billions in money, especially in Hudson Yards. Yes, Hudson Yards may be earning some of it back, but $630 million does not earn back $2.2 billion that we've paid. ESD also has not given us any financial details, even to the point that the Independent Budget Office cannot even do a true evaluation. Yet they have also not looked at the 8.6 inflation rate that we currently are under, or have any given reliability about a recession that would affect cost, delays in building, expected office rentals, or pilots. ESD also does not address the land use issue of Madison Square Garden or the fact that it does not pay any taxes while it still handcuffs and any truly significant Penn Station improvement because of the massive columns that run through the tracks that must support this structure. The at-risk of destruction buildings and blocks in the GPP are not blighted, substandard, a slum, unsanitary, or even avoided by the public. In fact, these areas and buildings are a vibrant, busy, sought-after business and residential community. It is knowingly fraudulent that ESD has portrayed these at-risk blocks in such a way in their outdated, inaccurate, and deceptive neighborhood conditions study in order to try to justify why these buildings deserve to be demolished. And in fact, GPP even violates the UDC's enabling legislation, commonly called the UDC Act. There are certain requirements an area must have for ESD to justify a land use action under the UDC Act. And it is clear ESD's Penn GPP does not meet these UDC Act requirements. The GPP does not provide any public services unless the preferred southern expansion alternative is approved by NEPA, which they have no control over. Let me say that again. Unless they get the southern expansion, we get no services, no private services at all. The only private services are in sites 1, 2, and 3, and if that southern expansion doesn't happen, we get nothing.
Can you define
Yet
private services? I'm sorry.
Public services, community services, homeless centers, all kinds of any other services. There's no, the only place, Community Board 4 made this perfectly apparent. In their letter to Empire State Development Corporation, one of their major concerns of Community Board 4 was that if the southern expansion doesn't happen, which they have no control over, we have no community service guaranteed by Empire State Development at all.
Thank you.
Yet they
Can
proposed.
you define NEPA? Why you said NEPA?
NEPA is the federal process, somebody else could explain it better than me, is the federal process that the southern expansion has to go through for the federal government to decide whether or not some kind of environmental process that has to go through to decide which alternative, the deep station alternative, the northern alternative, or the southern expansion alternative would be their primary alternative. Now, certainly ESD has made no ironclad plans for the deep station alternative and the northern alternative, and they were not even presented in any detail to the CATWAG. So they've already violated that they're required to use 3 alternatives to submit to NEPA because they really only have one alternative. It's kind of like the SkyTrain. They've only got one alternative that they actually is workable. Yet they propose to clear-cut several city blocks, destroy over 40 classic New York City buildings, including at least 13 National Registered eligible and 2 National Register listed historic buildings, many that already currently offer many public services. There's dental offices, homeless center. There's the St. John the Baptist Church that feeds thousands of people every week from their food pantry. We will lose all that, yet they have no guaranteed services. And finally, and maybe most importantly to me and my neighbors, is that the ESD GPP does not provide any protection for displaced businesses or their employees, and almost no protection for displaced residents. It is also actually calculated carefully to rob rent-regulated seniors of their legal New York rent stabilization when their lifelong homes are destroyed and they are displaced. And I know I'm probably out of my time limit, but let me explain that because this is important. When they were talking to you today about the Federal Uniform Act, understand that, as Senator Kruger said, could never make us whole. The Federal Uniform Act allows only a maximum of $7,200 for your lifetime in rental assistance. So a rent-stabilized senior, that money would be gone in less than 1 year. Plus, we, in our 70s, will be forced to be put out of our homes we've lived for 45 years. And all we asked, ESD, the CATWAG asked it, Senator Hoylman, Assemblymember Godfrey, and many other elected officials asked it. Community Board 4 asked it. Community Board 5 asked it. We all went to ESD and told them that residents should at least be able to be moved at their current affordability level, and that rent-stabilized seniors should have continuance of their rent stabilization. ESD came back and only said, and what they said to you today was not accurate or truthful if you look at the records. what their actual, and it's in my big 43-page testimony that I provided, their actual quote, and I'm not going to look it up now, was what is that in the future, when the buildings are built, rent-stabilized tenants, if they could income certify at that point in time, would have the option to return at an affordable level. Not our current level, not what it may be, not how many years we would be put somewhere else before we could return. It's very detailed in my report. You can go through it and you'll see. But they basically blew off Community Board 4, Community Board 5, their own catwag, as the lady from the Tri-State Campaign said, that they didn't do any of the catwag suggestions. They formed us. They presented everything to us. We all worked together to put back the changes, and then they basically didn't do them.
Okay,
And then
Eugene,
finally, our elected officials as well.
Yeah, thank you, Eugene.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, and we gave you extra time because you're giving illuminated information, but we appreciate it, and we will look at your 23 pages